Everyone, so something a little different today. We're going to be editing this portrait. This was some headshots I did for a client for his website, and I'm just going to bring you through my editing process and how I handle photos like this. So it was taken around sunset, which in Vancouver is about 4 p.m. So there's kind of like a yellow cast across the whole photo, which I kind of wanted. I wanted a warm, kind of inviting sunset look. Let's start off with our tone. So for exposure, I'm just going to bring up the exposure a little bit, and I'll leave the contrast. I might handle that in our tone curve. So then highlights, let's see if I drop the highlights, just brings back a bit of the sky. Again, moving back and forth, you can kind of see what it does. Shadows wise, I'm fairly happy. Might bring it up slightly just to bring back some of the detail to in the right side of the image here. So you can see before, it's fairly dark. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit, maybe here. White and black point, as I said, that's mainly to do with contrast, so I might just leave that for now. Texture, I'm going to drop a little bit because I want to give it the soft look. Same with the clarity, just very slightly drop it. And I might add some dehaze just to bring back some detail, maybe to about 12 is good. Vibrance and saturation, I'm not too concerned about that because the color that's mainly being cast is kind of a yellow and maybe a magenta in the sky, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. Then moving on to our tone curve, I'm going to do my usual 3 or 4 points that I like to do in the highlights, midtones and shadows. Then I like to do an extra one in the shadows just for a bit more control. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a lift, not too much. Yeah, there is good. See if I lift the midtones, it kind of brightens up behind the subject and a bit of the skin as well. Slight lift and highlights. I'm going to leave the highlights where they are. I might just drop them a bit at the top so they're not clipping. Perfect. Then we get on to our colors. As I said, mostly it's yellow, kind of orange, sunset colors. So I'm just going to play around with those and see what I like. But first, before I do that, I'm actually going to adjust the white balance. So although it is warm, it's a bit too warm for me, so I'm just going to drag the white balance back a little bit towards the cool side. Maybe it's too much. I'm just doing this by eye. You can do it where you take the pin drop tool and choose something that's relatively white in the background or something that you think should be white, and you just touch it, and then that adjusts the white balance to what I think it should be. So for me, I think that's still a bit warm, so I might just bring it back to 5500, which is like a nice daytime white balance. On to our colors. So saturation wise, I'm going to mainly play around with the red, orange and yellows. Let's see the red, if anything happens. You can see it's in the face and some in the background as well. So I'm not going to do too much, maybe increase the saturation a little bit. Orange, this is where I think most of, the color. So if I even drop the orange a little bit, you can see it removes a lot of the color. Again, I'm going to increase it maybe to about 5. I'm going to do a subject mask separately, so I'm going to handle the colors on the face separately. So I'm mainly just kind of focused on the background here for the moment. Yellows, again, kind of brings up the sky. Again, I like to go back and forth just to see where the yellows are. So obviously it's in the skin because the sun is coming from this direction here. Perfect. Then I'm going to leave the color grading for now. I'm going to skip straight to the masking. So if we click on our mask and click on subject, usually with portraits, Lightroom does a really good job of just selecting the subject because it's really separate from the background. Okay, and then as far as our subject goes, I am going to increase the exposure just to make him pop a little bit more. Not too much so it looks unnatural, maybe about here. Just plus 10, 11 is fine. Add a little bit of contrast. For the highlights, I'm going to pretty much increase them just a little bit. Shadows, increase a little bit. All I'm doing here is just making the subject pop a bit more from the background. And what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the yellow away from the face, not too much so it looks unnatural. So to do that, while I'm in my subject mask, I'm going to click this point color. As you can see, if I hover over kind of a yellow section or a section that I feel, I want to remove from, I'm just going to click here. It's selected kind of like an orangey yellow, which is like the skin color. So I'm just going to reduce the saturation just a touch, not too much. Similarly, I want to remove the kind of yellow cast from the eyes, from the whites of the eyes, and also from the teeth. So to do that, I'm going to press K and get a brush. And I have auto mask selected, so that kind of does like an AI judgment of where I think the mask should end. So I'm just going to go over the teeth. Does a pretty good job, and also in the whites of the eyes. So I'm just going to reduce the size of the brush. There are a few different ways you can kind of remove this yellow cast completely, but you can either increase the whites, increase the exposure. I find that makes it look a bit unnatural. The thing I just like to do is simply reduce the saturation. So as you can see, as I reduce the saturation, the white naturally comes back to the eyes and teeth. So when I zoom back out, actually I'll keep it zoomed in so you can see. I'll turn off this mask. See the yellow in the eyes and in the teeth, and I'll turn it back on. Looks much more natural. And then when I zoom back out, I just think the face looks a lot more natural now compared to the yellow cast that was on it before. So that is before and after the whites of the eyes. Perfect. And I'd like to do a radial gradient around the subject just to bring more focus to the face. So I'm going to cover the face and invert the mask. So everything around the face is being selected and the face is not being selected. So I'm just going to reduce the exposure, and I might just bring up the exposure on this side of the face a little bit just because the sun is coming directly from the left. So I'm going to do another radial gradient just on this side of the face, not too much. And I'm going to put the feather at 100% because I want a really gradual effect. And I'm just going to increase the exposure just a little bit. See if I move this around slightly. Great, so if you press Y on the keyboard, I'm fairly happy with that. You can see our before and after. So on the left, it's quite dull. A lot of yellow casting happening on the skin and on the teeth and eyes. And just by adjusting the white balance, the colors, and a few masks, you can see such a big difference in there. And then depending on what the client would like, I might go individually and just clean up a few spots on the face. So say I'll use the clone stamp tool, I'll reduce the size, I'll zoom in on the face and just clean up a few areas, any imperfections on the skin. Some of it will look natural, some of it you'll have to play around with. Really minor details. That is it. So you can see everything on the left is our before photo and on the right is our finished edit that hopefully the client will be happy to post on their website, on their Instagram, use as headshots in any way they want to. So that is a quick portrait edit. Hope you enjoyed it, and post in the comments if you have any questions about the tools I used. See you in the next one.